Good morning. I'm Nitasha Buldeo, and welcome to Wellbeing Wednesday. Today, we will be discussing menopause and exploring tips and practices that enable you to thrive through the menopause. Now, every year, approximately 25 million women pass through the menopause globally, and symptoms or signs of this transition vary. Now, what research has shown is that cultural beliefs about menopause has a huge impact on the symptoms experienced. So today we're going to be talking about the menopause, about the phases of the menopause, and then exploring tips and practices that can help you pass through this transition as comfortably as possible. Today, I have a guest, Georgiana Danet, who is a yoga and tantra teacher, and she will be sharing a few tips from tantra that enable you to thrive through the menopause. Before we move on to Georgiana, I just have a brief presentation sharing natural tips, herbal remedies, as well as practices that you can use to thrive through this period. Let's move on. Thriving through the menopause. Now we're going to take a brief look at some of the symptoms experienced during this transition. And this varies from woman to woman. Now we have very specific symptoms like hot flushes, but there are a variety of symptoms that can occur. Now, the main reason we experience these symptoms is due to the fluctuation of two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And menopause results because estrogen and progesterone levels start to decrease. So some of the symptoms that occur based on estrogen and progesterone are hair loss, vaginal dryness, the hot flushes, dry skin. And then from a more mental, emotional level, we experience mood swings, loss of libido, also symptoms of anxiety and depression. But another symptom of reducing estrogen and progesterone could be dizziness. Now, some of the other symptoms are weight gain and bloating. These are not necessarily related to the menopause, but could just be symptoms of getting older. So what we're going to do is explore the various phases of the menopause and understand what happens at each of these phases. Okay, when we think about female hormones, we think about 4 stages. Now, the stage 1, premenopause, is really the period for as long as you are menstruating. And all that means is that female hormones are in levels that enable you to actually menstruate, and you are quite fertile during these years. However, as estrogen levels start to decrease, we go through a stage called perimenopause. And during perimenopause, what you may experience is irregular or missed periods. You may have spotting, some symptoms of hot flushes, dizziness, mood swings. Menopause is defined as 12 consistent months without having a period. So you have only completed menopause if you've had 12 consecutive months without having a period. And postmenopause refers to the time when the hormonal fluctuations balance out and you no longer have a period. However, you no longer have any of the symptoms associated with menopause. So what we mean by menopause is really when the periods have stopped. Everything before that is referred to as perimenopause. And the perimenopause phase can last for a variety, for different women, that period can last for a various number of years. So there is no time limit on it. It just really depends on your body and your basic hormonal level. So now we're going to look at various methods to actually transition through this period of change as symptom-free as possible. Now, last week we looked at 7 ways to balance hormones naturally. Because what we do know is that if the other hormones within your body are in balance, then generally you transition through the menopause a lot easier. So what we want to do is ensure that our overall well-being is good, that we're making correct lifestyle choices to balance all hormones, and that is one way to ensure that we transition through the menopause as easily as possible. Now, if you have not watched the webinar from last week, I do recommend that you go back and watch it. It is available on social media as well as the Organic Apotheke YouTube channel. Now, the other symptoms that we normally associate with menopause is weight gain. However, what we do know is that if you maintain a healthy weight, then you experience fewer symptoms of menopause. One of the best ways to reduce hot flushes is to maintain a healthy weight. A healthy weight will also reduce your risk of breast cancer and heart disease, which are both more common in post-menopausal women. Now, to maintain a healthy weight, you need to eat well, so eat healthily, and increase your metabolic rate. Now, metabolism generally goes down as we get older. So what we need to do is ensure that we engage in activities that push up our metabolic rate. And one of the best ways to increase our metabolic rate is to increase muscle tone and muscle bulk. The way to do that is resistance training, weight-bearing exercises, or yoga. Now, while weightlifting is fabulous if you already are strong enough and if you already have a weightlifting practice, it is not necessary to suddenly start weight-bearing exercises as you go through the menopause. Just simple resistance band training can actually help build muscle and improve muscle tone. And just doing that can actually increase your metabolic rate. Yoga as well is another form of exercise that is known to increase muscle tone and improve metabolism. Now, in this diagram, I have a few simple yoga-based resistance work. And if you see, these exercises focus on the glutes, the buttocks, and the legs, because the buttocks and the legs are the largest muscle groups in the body. And if you use resistance training focused or targeted on this area, you burn more calories. And as you burn more calories, you lose more fat. The second thing is, if you use resistance training for these areas, you actually build more muscle in your legs and your glutes. And having more muscle also increases your metabolic rate. So resistance training is very important, whether it is resistance band training, yoga, or Pilates. Now, the other thing that we need to pay attention to is our diet. While it's important to follow the general recommendations in terms of diet for maintaining healthy hormones that we discussed in the previous webinar, in order to transition through the menopause as effortlessly as possible, it is important to pay attention to foods that actually have the ability to mimic estrogen in the body or increase estrogen levels in the body. So these are just a few tips on foods that we can eat to actually increase the amount of estrogen in the body and to maintain the estrogen balance naturally. These aren't estrogen supplements. These are foods that actually help maintain the estrogen within your body. And this is safe for everybody to use. We will be talking about estrogen supplements later on, or natural estrogen supplements that may be unsafe for some. But in terms of diet, these tips are safe for everybody to use because we're not actually giving you more estrogen. We're just eating foods that actually has a positive effect on estrogen and progesterone within your body. Now, what is recommended is a mainly plant-based diet. Plant-based diets lower your risk for breast cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure. It also helps build strong bones. But plant-based diets also have the ability to reduce, because they have the ability to reduce fat, they actually help maintain lean muscle mass. Now, what we need to do is aim for at least 1 portion of fruit and 4 to 8 portions of vegetable every day. The other thing that's very important is to ensure that you're getting enough fiber in your diet. Fiber ensures that all of the unhealthy fats, etc., have a means to be excreted out of the body. We need to ensure that we're having good fats. Omega-3 fats reduce your risk of heart disease, stroke, and cancer. So you need to ensure that you're having your walnuts, oily fish, sunflower seeds. The other very important thing for women is to ensure that we're getting enough calcium. Calcium helps maintain strong bones. And as estrogen levels tend to dip, we need to ensure that we are getting enough calcium. It's important to also ensure that we're getting enough vitamin D. So vitamin D supplementation may be necessary unless you live in a country where you have sufficient amounts of sunlight. Now, in terms of foods that actually are good for estrogen, you're looking at nuts, eggs, legumes, dark chocolate is really good, red and green vegetables. It's really important to ensure that you pay attention to the color of vegetable that you're eating. You need to include all the colors of vegetable, that's red, green, orange. But red and green are particularly important for estrogen. We also need to ensure that we're including sprouted grains into our diet, fish, and then milk. Now, milk is an important source of calcium. However, vegetable like lettuce is also very, very high in calcium. It's also important to start to reduce processed food high in sugar, refined carbs, and fats. It's important to reduce red meats, smoked meats, salt, alcohol, and caffeine. Now, in terms of estrogen supplementation, phytoestrogens are plants that have chemical structures similar to estrogen. Now, the isoflavones found in soya and red clover are examples of phytoestrogen. And I've just listed a few food sources that are high in phytoestrogens. Now, alfalfa and clover sprouts, and then very high isoflavones in soy and soy-based products. However, because phytoestrogens are very similar to estrogens overall, including your HRT chemical-based estrogens, because the phytoestrogens are very similar to any other type of estrogen. For those who are sensitive to estrogen, it's important that you do not take phytoestrogen supplements, or you do not take any of the foods recommended in very high amounts. Because if you have any estrogen dependent conditions, you can actually aggravate it. In terms of how phytoestrogens work, they actually mimic estrogen within the body, and they produce an they cause the gut bacteria to produce an enzyme called E.col that also has a benefit on hot flushes and reducing symptoms of menopause. So you can either use a phytoestrogen supplement or an E.col supplement, and it's best to see what works better for you. But do pay attention to the fact that they do mimic estrogen in the body. Okay, now there's also a few herbs that have been used for centuries that actually have a positive effect on reducing symptoms of menopause. Black cohosh is a herbal product. However, black cohosh, while it is very effective in reducing symptoms of hot flushes, it is not recommended for anybody with liver disease. Dong quai is a traditional Chinese medicine. Again, very beneficial for hot flushes and mood swings. However, dong quai may interact with blood thinning drugs, so you do need to pay attention to potential side effects from these herbal ingredients. Evening primrose oil has been shown to be beneficial for menopausal symptoms. However, once again, don't use evening primrose oil if you have a bleeding disorder, you suffer from schizophrenia, epilepsy, or seizures. Now, it's very important with these herbal supplements to actually look at the little safety notice, because most of the good brands will let you know how to use these supplements and their safety indications. While these three are shown to be quite effective, it is important to know that they too, any herbal supplement, in fact, not just these three, any herbal supplement has the ability to interact with any medication you are currently taking. So please ensure that whatever you use naturally is safe for you to use. Now, the safest thing that you can do for menopause is yoga. A 12-week study compared hatha yoga to regular exercise and non-intervention, that means nothing. And this study showed that yoga practitioners showed statistically lower scores for menopausal symptoms, stress levels, depression symptoms, as well as significantly higher scores in the quality of life when compared to both the regular exercise as well as the control group. So basically, yoga and exercise helped balance hormones. However, the yoga group showed a better result for menopausal symptoms, stress levels, and depression. So what I have here is a few poses that have been researched and show positive effects on treating symptoms of menopause, such as hot flushes. However, what I do recommend is joining a regular yoga class, because in all of the studies, what was determined is regular yoga. So it is classes 1 to 3 times a week over a prolonged period that actually has the most positive results. So I do recommend joining a regular yoga class. If there is a class focused on menopause, then that would be even better. Now, we're moving on to Tantra and how tantric practices can help benefit you during the menopause. Tantra is synonymous with sex, but Tantra is really about connection with yourself or between you and your significant other. The word Tantra means web or to weave energy. And in practice, Tantra is about using your body as a means to greater connection. Today's guest is Georgiana Danet. She's an internationally certified yoga and Tantra teacher, holistic coach, speaker, author of numerous books. She is passionate about teaching Tantra to women, and she will be sharing a few tantric tips to thrive through the pre, peri, menopause, and postmenopause.
I've always been curious about life, and I knew that life is a little bit more than just waking up, going to work, coming home, eating, sleeping, wake up, and so on. So since teenage years, I wanted to discover somehow the mystery of life. And I came across integral yoga. I started practicing it for 32 years ago. And quite soon, the more I practiced, I realized that actually we don't know so much about ourselves, how we function, who we really are. And the more I learned from this vast domain of yoga, the more I realized how little we actually know. And 28 years ago, I got an idea that I want to help in particular women, because I saw so many wonderful women having marvelous qualities, but either they were not aware of them or not manifesting them enough. So I started something that I called Shakti groups or Tantra for Women classes. And it was really, it's still a wonderful adventure. I have been meeting thousands of women in 15 countries so far. So this is how I started, and I'm still doing it because I love it. To start with just a small short information about menstruation and how we function from this point of view. So in the modern medicine, there is this knowledge that it is normal for women to have the menstruation and the hemorrhage, the bleedings during the menstruation, because it's the normal cycle of a woman. And I will not go into the medical details, it's not my domain. But in the yoga system, in the tantric system, it is said like this: yes, menstruation, it is normal, but the bleeding during the menstruation, it is not. And if you think a little bit, if you would bleed from your nose, you will run in desperation to the first doctor to stop the bleeding from your nose if you'll bleed for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. Some women are having the menstruation with bleedings for 2 weeks. So there are techniques in the yoga system and in the tantra system which teaches how you can stop bleeding during the menstruation. And this is actually our erotic potential. It is like, you can think analogically, like you have a certain amount of money in the bank account, and then you have two choices. You spend it every month, so you throw it on no matter what, or you reinvest it so that at the end of, for example, after 20 years, 30 years, your account in the bank, instead of being completely depleted and empty, you have actually more. So in the tantric system, there is a phenomenon, a biological phenomenon, which is called the erotic continence, in which you learn how to stop wasting your erotic potential through the bleedings every month. Unfortunately, because we don't have this knowledge in school, nobody teaches us, women will inevitably hit menopause. It simply means that the erotic potential is basically gone. We just throw it in the bin every month for many years. But still there is hope, so you can still do some simple exercises in order to get back a little bit of this energy which is specific for the erotic potential. So one technique which is very simple to do is called the deer technique, and it implies that you massage your breasts in a specific way, and I will let you know just in a few seconds. So when you do the deer technique, you need to have a little bit of time for yourself, 15 minutes. It usually doesn't take longer than that. So the first step that you do, you have to warm up your hands. So you will have to rub them until you feel that your hands are really, really hot. And then you place them on top of your breasts, and you feel how the heat, the energy from your hands are coming inside of your breasts. Then the next phase, you'll have to sit either you can sit on your own heel so that the heel presses against the entrance to your vagina and a little bit the clitoris. Otherwise, you can sit on the corner of a chair or a harder sofa. So you have this pressure against your genitals. And depending on some of the secondary effects of this technique that you want to achieve, you'll have to massage the breasts either from the middle down and around, if you want to make them a little bit bigger, or from the chest, from the middle of the chest up and under them, if you want to make your breast firmer. But when you do this massage, you will also put in motion the lymph system, which is quite a lot around the armpits. And by massaging the breast, the body somehow receives the signal, the brain receives the signal that somehow it's very similar when you breastfeed. So this will regulate the hormonal balance in your body. And if you are not yet in the menopause, it will stop the bleedings. So if you do this every day, for minimum 30 rotations and maximum 300 rotations, it will really make a difference. So you will notice after a couple of weeks, you will still have your menstrual cycle, but the bleedings will be much less. And if you are in the menopause, many of the not so nice effects of menopause will also disappear slightly because you start balancing the hormones in your body. So this was the second phase in which you massage your breast like this, as I explained. And the third one, you will have to contract very, very tightly your vaginal muscles and also a little bit of the anus. And in the same time, you visualize how the erotic energies are flowing along your spine, all the way up to the top of your head in the crown chakra or Sahasrara. So this is one of the easiest things that you can do. And also you can do it even more pleasant. So to say, you can use a little bit of oil on your hands when you massage the breast, so it's soft, the feeling. You can use, for example, any organic oil, argan oil, or wheat germ oil, because it's very rich in E vitamin. And you can add a few drops of dill essential oils, and this will have some of the phytoestrogens, which are also very good for your breasts and for your health. So this is one of the techniques that you can do. It's very pleasant, and it also activates the heart chakra, anahata, by massaging the breast in this manner.
Thank you, Georgiana, for those tips. We definitely will be having you join us again on a future webinar so that we can learn more from you. Now, next week, we have another topic focused on women's health. Next week, we will be looking at PMT, endometriosis, and PCOS. Now, next week, we go back to the pre-menopause phase. So the stage where we are menstruating, and we'll look at premenstrual tension, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and endometriosis. We'll be looking at tips and ways to reduce symptoms and just general well-being for the period when you are menstruating. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next week.